Good morning. Welcome again to Morning Devotions, and thank you again for being with us. Now hold steady because I'm probably going to get some of you upset today. We're going to talk about divorce. One of the things God did in Malachi in his last words was say, why are you divorcing your wife? Why are you covering your wife with violence as with a garment? Now please, I understand divorce, and don't sit and think that I grew up all pretty and perfect. My parents were divorced when I was 3 years old. My father's divorced and remarried. My brother's divorced and remarried. Many of my relatives are divorced and remarried. Please, I understand the pain and the suffering. But sometimes as a pastor, you have to stand up and teach people, let's not talk about what's going on out there. Let's talk about what God says and what should be going on in here. And anybody who has ever been through a divorce will say amen to the things I'm going to teach you today. Beginning in chapter 19, verse 3, of Matthew, Jesus said, some Pharisees came to test him. Notice, they're testing him. They're looking for a way to find fault with Jesus. They ask him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for any and every reason? Haven't you read, Jesus replied, that at the beginning the Creator made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh. So they are no longer two, but one. Therefore, what God has joined together, let not man separate. Why then, they asked, did Moses command that a man give a wife a certificate of divorce and send her away? Jesus replied, Moses didn't command it. Moses permitted you to divorce your wives because your hearts were hard. But it was not that way from the beginning. I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, and marries another woman, commits adultery. Now notice Jesus goes back to the origins of things, and you always find truth at the head of the stream. You find the purity of a truth at the beginning of a truth. So Jesus said, let's go back to the way it was at the beginning. The way it was at the beginning, God made them male and female. There's no men marrying women and women marrying men. God made them male and a male and a female got married. They became one flesh, under one skin, so to speak. And then God said, therefore what God has joined together, let not man separate. Now, he said, but people are divorcing. Yes, Moses permitted this. He didn't command this, he permitted this. And the reason he permitted it is because your hearts were hard. Now, let me talk to the men for just a minute. Your wives are never going to be someone you completely understand. I mean, I've been married for 38 years, and my lovely still surprises me. And I still don't figure out why she loves me and puts up with me. But as a man, you are never going to completely understand your wife. That's what makes marriage so much fun. It's a life of discovery. She's going to think different than you. She's not going to always agree with you. Now, if you want to destroy your marriage and destroy your family, it's very easy. All you have to do is harden your heart. Now, I would say to each gentleman listening to me today, rather than criticizing your wife and getting mad at your wife and letting your heart become like a stone, why don't you begin to soften your heart toward your wife? Why don't you begin to try to listen? Why don't you do as the Bible teaches us, to live with your wife with an understanding heart? Why don't you begin to change your heart toward your wife? Why don't you begin to soften your heart? Don't you ever get mad at your wife? Sure I do. I mean, my goodness, of course, we're human. But guys, you can't harden your heart. When you harden your heart, that's when you begin to think about divorce. You have to soften your heart with your wife. We're the head of the family under Christ. Rather than speak to the women, I would speak to the men. Guys, let's all soften our hearts toward our wife. Then we won't be thinking about divorce, and we won't be talking about separation, and we won't be looking for somebody else to make us happy. Let's soften our hearts with our wives.